necessarily the IG that always does it, the organization that gave the money.
Oh, I agree. And one of the things that ought to happen is state legislators all over the country ought to be checking with their state governments, particularly in states that have state auditors, and asking them to check whether ACORN affiliates and subsidiaries have received monies from the state governments, and if so, they should be asking for audits and asking those organizations to substantiate that they did what they were supposed to do with the money.
Somebody signs that voucher and says that the work has been done. Somebody signs it, so somebody is responsible. It's not just up in the sky. It is there. And if it isn't there, then we never get any money.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
I would like to.
That's a good point. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marcel.
Well, I just like to say that the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, after doing their own audit, did cut off all funding to ACORN for specifically that reason. Once they did the audit and asked what happened to the funds, they could not track back. There were no clear paths, and they did cut off all the funding.
And the Catholic Campaign for Human Development is certainly simpatico with ACORN in terms of its mission and philosophy. So it wasn't because they didn't like what they were doing. It was how they were spending the money.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Ms. Reid, thanks for coming here today. I appreciate taking your time and having the courage to come forward and talk as you have. Of the 300 and some odd elements that make up ACORN, what's the control group? What's the leadership? Where does it all come together? Is there an executive committee, a leadership cell? Who are the folks who are coordinating all 300 and some odd bodies?
Well, we started to do our own research before this story broke back in August of 2008, and what I can tell you is what we did find, as Hans did talk about the interlocking boards. We found there were about 30 or 40 people whose names kept appearing on all of the list, because we submitted a list of 31 questions. I submitted that list in July of 2008, and one of the questions I specifically asked was for the names of all of the corporations, all of the minutes. I asked for all of the minutes for 5 years going back for each one of the listed corporations. I wanted the minutes, I wanted the names, I wanted the year it was incorporated. I wanted to know about any bank accounts that were held or had been closed, and the same 30 names kept popping up.
So it's about 30 or 40 people generally? Now, Mr. Rathke, in terms of title, I guess he's been either demoted or is he still involved in the management of the operation?
Wade Rathke.
Yeah.
No, Wade Rathke his relationship with ACORN was severed by motion and movement of the board in July 2008 in Detroit.
So he's not participating at all in another capacity?
Oh, no.
No.
Well, we're not sure about that because, in fact, I think his relationship was severed supposedly with ACORN, but I believe he's now the head of ACORN International, which is trying to replicate ACORN all over the world. And what we don't know, because there's been no forensic audit done of ACORN, is we have no idea how much money from ACORN and its subsidiaries and affiliates, tax dollars, etc. We don't know how much of that money, if any, is flowing over to fund the operations of ACORN International and pay Wade Rathke's salary. We have no idea, and that is another problem.
So as far as I know, he actually is involved in some level with 3 affiliates. I believe he is still the editor-in-chief of Policy Review, the ACORN magazine. It's a quarterly, I think, put out by the American Institute for Social Justice. He is still a director of AM/FM, which is the Affiliated Media Foundation Movement, which I don't even really understand what they do. I think they fund radio stations or community programming or something like that. Somebody will probably explain it to me one of these days. And he's involved with ACORN International, which has changed its name to Community Organizations International, apparently at the behest of ACORN, but maybe it was the Organic Genius's decision to rebrand his subsidiary. I'm not sure.
Just one point of clarification. COI is COI in the United States under that name. International, ACORN International, ACORN International.
Oh, because the brand hasn't been tarnished in
Hasn't
India,
been
for
tarnished
example.
in India, yeah. And I think that he bears watching. One of the things that disturbs me most is that while we're looking here, he is replicating ACORN all over the world now.
Yes, Fred? Wait for the microphone, please. Oh, okay. We'll speak loudly so our microphone can pick you up.
Just following up on the previous question about the 30 or 40 individuals that run this thing. That sort of gets to one of the points that's been argued two ways, and whether it's a top-down operation that's corrupt at its core, or if it's just like blatantly and horribly disorganized, and the people just are mismanaging the money. You have individual employees giving advice to the Hannah Giles and so forth. Which one would you say? I mean, is it definitely a situation where it's top-down corruption involved in this?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's a guillotine right over there in the corner, inch toward it.
In for a penny, in for a pound, right?
Feel that arm coming off. No, I would really say one of my huge issues with ACORN has always been is that decisions don't flow from the bottom up. Decisions flow from the top down. And it doesn't show that way, but ACORN is very stratified. And there seems to be the bulk of this information in the hands of, maybe 100 people. And then everyone else below that really doesn't know what's going on. So it is corrupt, and I would say it's entrenched in corruption, but it's at the top. The people at the bottom really do not know.
I have to say, one of the disingenuous things about this Harshberger report, he did introduce the concept of reforming ACORN, in a legitimate way, where you would cut off a lot of these organizations and narrow the focus and keep it down to 2 or 3. But that's been previously proposed, and the so-called reform movement now in control ACORN hasn't done anything on it yet, and seems to actually, if the ACORN International stories are accurate, they're just making it even larger.
Even larger, even harder to catch, because the thing about them is, I will say, they do adapt. They do adapt. And the one mistake here is that this is so protracted that by the time that there's any action actually taken, they will have adapted around it.
Or they will have gotten rid of all the evidence.
That's right.
Okay, don't forget that the San Diego office of ACORN was told by the Attorney General of California that they were going to be, the Attorney General was going to look into what they were doing, was going to pay them a visit. And suddenly 20,000 documents were dumped into the trash outside that office, including highly private information about mortgage applications and bank account records of Citibank customers. Also, the Louisiana Attorney General's office is investigating ACORN, which has a headquarters in New Orleans. And one of the reasons that they testified at a hearing before Congress where I was, and they said one of the reasons they executed a raid on the ACORN offices was because they had initially been talking to ACORN's lawyer in New Orleans about documents and other information that they wanted to get, and the lawyer called them up and said, well, I hate to tell you this, but 3 of the hard drives have disappeared and we don't know where they are. In which case, so the Attorney General's office immediately executed a raid and seized all of their computers and other records. The point is we have specific examples here of internal documentation, possible evidence disappearing. And that is a real problem that is enhanced by the fact that the federal government is not doing the kind of investigation they should, which is a forensic audit, as Marcel said. That's exactly what needs to be done.